overdiagnosed mental health issues as the government defends its plans to cut welfare spending. The Eye also leads with the government's speculated disability cuts, reporting unrest is growing in Labour ranks. It's also the lead story of The Guardian too, saying Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer faces growing fury over the decision. And it's also on the front page of The Times, which says the plans are likely to be opposed by many Labour MPs. Meantime, The Telegraph reports that the former head of Ofsted has accused the Education Secretary of putting the interests of unions ahead of the interests of children. The Express features a story on the approval of a miracle drug on its front page, said to make most signs of the disease cystic fibrosis vanish. We will not become victims of this, the Mirror leads on the health battles faced by Sir Chris Hoy and his wife. The Sun reports new details on the relationship between McFly star Danny Jones and his wife, and the Star leads on a spell of good weather coming our way, starting tomorrow on St Patrick's Day. So let's get more then with Duncan and with Anna. Welcome to both of you. There's a sense of urgency to decision-making about welfare. This is because we're expecting a Green Paper on Tuesday, is it not? Are they getting themselves in a pickle? Are there rows in Cabinet? And are Labour MPs going to rebel on whatever is presented to them?
Well, it depends what they're going to do, because if they're going to just slash benefits, then there will be a row, and I think rightly so, because it really this argument should be about eligibility. So we know that it's a big problem, and it's not just the size of the welfare bill, which is colossal, and actually I don't think that should be the real driver. It's the fact that we have so many, and there's a figure somewhere, isn't there, Duncan? What is it? Well, anyway, it's millions of people.
Yep.
Who should be in work, who aren't in work, and it's how we get people into work. And that in itself is not easy, because it's also about the value of work and making people understand that old work ethic, that it's good to work, it's good for you. It's not just about money, it does all these other things for you, sociability, and so on and so forth. And so it's how Labour do this. But gosh, what an indictment after 14 years of Conservative government, that there looks like they're going to have to make some very serious changes that, frankly, you'd be expecting a Conservative government to be doing after 14 years of Labour.
So we're talking 2.8 million people economically inactive because they say they are too sick to work. So that is a massive chunk of the population. There's a lot of benefit stories on the front pages of most of tomorrow's newspapers. And it's really interesting. You make the point that this is like a Labour government pretending to be a Conservative government. Just imagine this: if you're a Labour MP who got elected last year, July 2024, you're progressive, you want to make the world a better place, you've come into a party that has axed winter fuel payments for a load of people, you've seen foreign aid money being transferred to defence spending. Now you're going to have to explain to your constituents who might be on some form of disability benefit, oh, we might have to cut some of these benefits. I'm not surprised in the slightest that there is this growing swell of what appears to be rebellion. It's whether or not, particularly these new Labour MPs, are going to go, actually, Keir, you're bang out of order here, and go into bat for their constituents, or they want a hard and fast political career and they're just going to follow the whip.
Yeah, you didn't even mention the keeping the cap on the child benefit as well, which is children, pensioners, the disabled and those abroad who are very vulnerable. I mean, as you said, it's a list, isn't it, for Labour MPs to contend with. Much is made of the PIP payments, the personal independence payment.
Yes.
You're given points for difficulties that you face, for example. The suggestion had been that they might freeze it, which even George Osborne did not do. That seems like it's gone out the window. But the problem is that the top rate of incapacity benefit looks like it might still be cut. At present, if you are unfit for work, you get paid £800 a month, but that is twice as much as job seekers' allowance. So the question that people say is, do people try and get that benefit and not job seekers, and does that need to be sorted out? So there's all sorts of questions that people have about how this money is paid and assessed, which, as you say, goes back to eligibility.
It does. It goes back absolutely to that. Remember, of course, when I was in government, we did some things which were, you mentioned George Osborne, the Tory mantra at that time was, it's got to be the case that you are better off in work than on benefits. This is.
But I thought universal credit was supposed to try to deliver that.
Exactly.
That was the point.
It is this problem with PIP, and the government's got to get this absolutely right, because PIP should not be cut, because for some people it is critical. It means they can live their lives, they can work, because they've got that extra support if you're profoundly disabled that you need. But it's about shifting our whole attitude and saying, just because you have got a disability, and that may be poor mental health, it may be physical, it may be some other, doesn't preclude you from working. And often you need that extra support so that you can work. And I think it should be much more about the value of work and why we don't want millions of people saying, oh, I can't work because I have got a mental health problem. That doesn't necessarily preclude you from working. In fact, many people with low-level, poor mental health find that work is their saviour.
And yet we heard Wes Streeting saying today about the overdiagnosis of mental health and whether those people need to be reassessed too, to get them back to work.
Exactly that. I think we're now in a climate, and mental health is a two words, a phrase that is used so often in today's society. And we were talking about this earlier, and it's a bit of a minefield when you talk about it here on Sky News. You don't want to upset any viewers, but there was a time when you're a slightly older person like I am, or a bit of an old git, you know, when you were feeling a little bit uncertain about taking a driving test or an exam or something, you'd go a bit nervous about this. And I think for some people it's shifted a little bit, and that has become some form of a mental health issue. And slightly more robust people will turn around and go, well, that's life. You know, life can be a little bit challenging at times. This story on the front page of the Telegraph talks about Gen Z workers. So for people watching, Generation Z are those people who were born between 1997 and 2012. I have a degree of sympathy for Gen Z, because you're never too far away from a news story somewhere where people are just going, oh, Gen Z, they won't do this, they won't do that, they won't fight for their country, they think that Britain's racist or whatever. There's a lot of research that's out there, or rather polling, that has indicated and given various results. But on the front page of the Telegraph, they talk about 4 in 10, so 40% of Gen Z workers consider quitting to live on benefits. And you have to start thinking, well, how has that culture, how has that come about?
It's shift. It's this shift away from the value of work
but
and
also,
the work ethic.
But also, they talk
Sorry.
about the reasons behind this being predominantly mental health issues. And I think maybe now is the time to have quite a bare and honest debate about what constitutes a mental health issue, and does that actually stop you from doing some form of work? And I don't know the answer.
Yeah, not surprising, some of the mental health charities have spoken out about this, not least to complain, of course, that mental health services were cut under the Conservatives and have not been restored, suggesting, for example, that for years, this is the charity Mind, for years mental health waiting lists have been a major problem. What we need now is a clear plan from this government on how they intend to tackle them. We're Streeting suggesting the government is recruiting 8,500 more mental health staff to get waiting lists down. Same as if you can't get your hip replacement, you struggle to get to work because you cannot walk.
Absolutely.
So we've got blocks in getting people back,
forgive me, but
which are...
Sorry, Anne. It's just that we've got to be very careful about not just saying, oh, well, you know, people get a bit anxious, whereas in the past you say you get nervous. And there is a mental health crisis, and it's real. And one of the big criticisms that people have, and rightly so, is that if you've got a child who is suffering, is that they go to CAMS, which is the local mental health trust, that will deliver supposedly treatment, they will be waiting.
Years, they'll wait years.
And they will. And that is unacceptable, because even if it's a question of building in resilience and all other things, if they can't get into it to be able to do those things, that child is not going to school. That child is suffering in the real world.
And Wes Streeting talked about another blocker, which is if you try a job and it's not for you, then you have to go right back to the beginning and reapply. And so they've got a take a chance on work, offer a right to try guarantee, so you don't have to go back to the start from the beginning if a job doesn't work out for you. Guardian as well, Keir Starmer is to defy growing fury by driving through welfare cuts with an overhaul that could see more than 600,000 benefit claimants lose out on an average of £675 a month, Duncan.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's another front page story here. He's got a whopping majority, so he can afford politically, you know, to take some flack for this, and he's got some political capital. But, I mean, I remember when we had the Blair government in 1997, you had this great MP called Frank Field, who was the MP for Birkenhead, who Tony Blair said, go and think the unthinkable when it came to reforming the welfare state. And literally, everyone just went, don't do that. And he never really got to do perhaps the radical overhaul or review or reform. And I also remember a couple of decades later, and I think you were part of the coalition government there, Anna, you know, around 2010 when George Osborne had austerity kicking in, those first couple of years, I remember the images on Whitehall and Downing Street. You had protests, you had disabled people chaining themselves to railings, some people throwing themselves onto the pavement. Those images are, you know, they're still fresh in my mind, they're still stark. So I think Starmer is taking a little bit of a political gamble with doing this, but also it just links us all back into the amount of spending that we have as a nation, and this is what's driving this, isn't it? We're looking at everything now, and there are some tough decisions have to be made.
And yet people talk about inconsistencies in overall government policy. For example, this is about getting people back to work at a time when you're making employers think twice about hiring staff and keeping them because of national insurance contributions, because of minimum wage issues, and because of workers' rights, which all load bills onto the business sector.
Yes,
so how do you marry the two?
But it's all about striking the balance, but it's also to understand. I mean, I am a big supporter of workers having more rights, actually. I tell you why. Because I think it's part of that feeling that you are valued. And if you're valued, and a lot of this Gen Z, the young will say, but, you know, you get some crappy job, that's how it'll be described. They
Excuse your language?
Quite good for me, actually. Okay, fine. It's not a very bad word, surely. But no, that's what they will say. You know, it's a rubbishy job, and the pay's a bit rubbishy, and they treat you rubbish. That's the point. And I think that we need to make sure that people understand the value of work, because they feel value, and if you feel value, in turn, you pay back by giving your all and not throwing a sickie or whatever.
I know you want to contribute. Can I get to another story very quickly, which is the Daily Express? I mean, I love a health story, but anyway, talk me through this one if you can.
Well, this is a good news story among some of the doom and gloom knocking around. So, a miracle drug makes cystic fibrosis vanish is the headline. It's an exclusive on the front page of the Daily Express. They're claiming, rightly, because I remember this, they've had a campaign over 5 years about trying to get a particular drug listed on, if you like, available on the NHS, so that 90% of cystic fibrosis patients can get access to this. It's been described as a wonder drug.
Fantastic.
It's amazing. And, I mean, I think we've seen over the years that people who have cystic fibrosis, their life has been very limited. The quality of life hasn't been great. This drug is a game changer. They're calling it a next generation drug. It's been backed by the regulators, so it's a case of like, yeah, we like this. The slight fly in the ointment is the actual cost of it to the NHS, as a lot of these new treatments and drugs is always the issue, isn't it? Can we afford it? But I think this is good news tonight for anyone who's got this condition.
OK. Our work is not finished. Stay tuned for the next part of the programme, including The Guardian, jubilation, more happy news, as Newcastle United lifts its first major trophy in, would you believe it, 7 decades. Back in a moment.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We start with breaking news.
I am Anna Botting.
It's been quite some day.
The golden age of America begins right now.
A long-awaited ceasefire is now underway.
First question, Sky News.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
Describe this feeling, it's incredible.
Now to California.
The Democratic mayor of Los Angeles cut the fire department budget.
Do you owe citizens an apology? Have you nothing to say today?
Jane Secker, Sky News. Would you like to respond to us now?
I've never seen anything like this.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
In principle, would you agree to do that?
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
Historic day here today.
The cameras are poised here, there, everywhere, waiting to see what the president might do next.
I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all.
You are on Sky News. Welcome to the BAFTAs.
I'm Katie Spencer, Sky's arts and entertainment correspondent, and from the BAFTAs to the Brit Awards, the Oscars to the Olivier's, our entertainment team is here interviewing some of the biggest stars in the world.
This is the story of the night. It's the little independent film that could.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news.
I want to start the programme today with an aim, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started.
This is your chance. Tell people.
This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No,
but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
I'm Alistair Bunkle, Sky's Middle East correspondent based here in Jerusalem.
The only way into Gaza for us right now is with the Israeli military.
We've just reached the centre of Khan Yunis.
The IDF had brought us in to show us a tunnel network under a residential neighbourhood.
At the end of the day, it's war at the top. It's war down here.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, DC.
Where are we?
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Duncan Barks and Anna Soubry are still here with me. Welcome to both of you. Let's go to the top of the Times, whichever one wants it. I know one of you is trying to avoid the football, so I don't know if that makes a difference. But anyway,
I'll do football.
You'll do football.
Anna's the football expert.
OK, so you crack on with this. This is about asylum appeals and a massive backlog.
Yeah, so the headline speaks volumes. Deadline looms for asylum appeals. There's a backlog that the Times is saying is ballooned by 485%. Now, just to give some context to this, it's the number of failed asylum seekers. So these are people who have applied but are waiting for an appeal against their rejections. It's risen by nearly 500% in 2 years. And therefore, that is resulting in making it, well, you can't move those who are currently housed in hotels out because they're still waiting for their appeal to be heard. Now, the reason for this, it appears, is there's a shortage of lawyers. So you're not being able to actually turn over the cases at the rate that you would like to. Ministers are planning to introduce a 24-week legal deadline for all asylum appeals to be heard after new figures showed there's almost 42,000 people waiting for a decision. Those are the latest figures at the end of last year. But fundamentally, there aren't enough lawyers knocking around to do this. And just to put another bit of context on this, the Refugee Council has forecast if the number of people being housed in hotels does not fall, it will cost taxpayers nearly £1.5 billion a year.
And just very quickly in one sentence, why are there not enough lawyers?
Because we don't get paid enough money. And so if you're a bright young person, you're not going to go and become a criminal barrister unless you absolutely love the job like I do. But obviously I'm not young and you could argue I'm not that bright. But in all seriousness, you know, the market works in the sense against what we want, which is if you don't pay people, and you see this figure, it says £65 an hour, £69 an hour in London. That's not money in the back pocket of that lawyer. That includes all the overheads, all the admin staff that they will need. And then we wonder why we don't have enough lawyers, because we're not paying them enough. It's like doctors.
Football, shall we? Front page of The Guardian, fantastic photo. You know, apologies to Liverpool, but this is an amazing moment for Newcastle, waiting 70 years for a major domestic trophy.
I'll let Anna pick up on this.
I mean, I watched the game. Look, I love football, right?
Yeah.
And I do love football, and I'm struggling with this one because my team, which is Notts County, is also called the Magpies. But the Magpies is the necklace black and white, you see, black and white army. Anyway, I won't trouble you with all of that. But Newcastle beat Liverpool, which in itself was amazing. And you can see, just look at the absolute joy and jubilation. And this is what football does to people. But when you've waited as long as these guys have, it's the most marvellous and magical moment.
It's great. It's great to see.
a win is always good, but to win in these circumstances and as the underdog, because, of course, Liverpool are at the top of the Premier League. They are playing magnificently. They've had a difficult week. They played Paris Saint-Germain and they lost in the Europeans, which was a bit of a shake-up. But the Toon Army, look at that joy.
They've never been shy in showing their love of football.
The only contribution I can make is I reckon it was a bumper night in City Vaults in the big market, because I know that's a pub in Newcastle where they do a lot of football.
But it was nice.
Good for the Newcastle economy.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly, but they're right to celebrate because their team was the better. In the afternoon, they were the better team. A richly deserved win. Well done.
And staying with the cheer, the weather, the sun has got its pat on.
It has. So the Daily Star is getting very excited, and rightly so, that it's going to be knocking 19 Celsius tomorrow, which is St Patrick's Day. So a good reason to wear some green and drink something black would be my advice to viewers.
Unless you're at work.
You can get the zero.
Oh, you can get the naught. Have you tried that? It's great
black
stuff.
With a zero. There are other alternatives, allegedly. Not yet founded.
Well,
stunning.
You know, it's been freezing cold. The plants have already wilted, so back to the sunshine.
We need some
They'll be
cheer.
confused again, won't they? Should we do the weather forecast? Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you. So let's take a look then at the weather.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
So why, then? It's high pressure. It will keep things mostly settled all the way to Friday, with a change in wind direction bringing milder and sunnier conditions. So tomorrow, then, it will start mostly dry, if rather cloudy, but there will be a few showers around. There'll be patches of frost and fog, especially for the northwest of Scotland. The showers will become mainly confined to Ireland and the far southwest of England during the morning. Elsewhere, it will stay mostly dry, with cloud breaking to give bright or sunny spells. Northwest Scotland and eastern England will have the best of the sunshine at lunchtime. Temperatures will be near average, but some coastal areas will have a chilly breeze, especially in the south. It's only 9, it's not 16, is it? Or 19, did it say? The afternoon will bring increasing amounts of sunshine, especially to northern and eastern Britain. By the evening, the showers over Ireland and southwest England will largely die out. Tuesday then looks mostly sunny. The southwest of Ireland will be cloudier with a risk of showers. The wind will pick up in the south too.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Well, top stories ahead for you. Around 20 people have been arrested in connection with a fire that killed dozens at a nightclub in North Macedonia.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
This is Sky News at 11 o'clock. The headlines this evening. A nightclub fire claims the lives of 59 people in North Macedonia. An initial investigation says pyrotechnics inside the building most likely caused the fire. The Health Secretary refuses to say whether the government will pull back on plans to freeze some disability payments, but says the current system is unsustainable. Newcastle United win their first major football trophy in 70 years after beating Liverpool 2-1 at Wembley in the Carabao Cup final. Pope Francis is seen for the first time in a month as the Vatican releases a new photograph of him celebrating Mass in hospital. A new crew arrives on the International Space Station, allowing 2 stranded astronauts set to return to Earth after 9 months in orbit.